Welcome to Decision Analyst Insider Series webinar on Market Segmentation, a Powerful Tool. My name is Christy Allen. I am the Marketing Director at Decision Analyst and the moderator today. Before I introduce our presenter, I have a few notes for everyone. In the handout section, there is a copy of today's presentation along with some related white papers. Also, please feel free to ask any questions by typing in the chat box. We will attempt to answer as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. If we don't answer your question during the webinar, someone will respond to your question within a day or two. Today's presenter is Elizabeth Horn, the Vice President and Director of Marketing Science. She specializes in market segmentation and regularly consults with clients regarding the best practices in segmentation research and implementation. And with that, I will hand it over to Elizabeth.
Thank you, Christy. Good morning or afternoon, depending upon your neck of the woods in the world. We are glad you could join us today for a discussion of market segmentation. So the goal of marketing is to concentrate effort within a specific customer group or groups to gain a competitive advantage. Market segmentation aids this endeavor by identifying groups of customers who are similar to one another. So what is segmentation? Well, it has two broad purposes. The first is to tailor marketing communications to particular customer groups. And the second purpose is to help develop new products. Successful segmentation depends on understanding what customer groups need, how they differ from one another, and how they decide among products and services. So what makes a particularly good segmentation? Well, the segment should share more commonalities within each group than they do across groups. The segment should be large enough for organizations to mount cost-effective campaigns, and the segment should be reachable through your typical marketing, advertising, distribution avenues. So what's kind of the evolution of consumer segmentation? Just like any market research technique, segmentation does have a history, a story. So it first started out, marketers wanted to describe consumer households or even businesses, and it was just simply a matter of gathering the relevant demographics and performing a cluster analysis. So demographics for households or firmographics for businesses are fairly straightforward in most cases. The decision maker is generally identifiable, and characteristics such as income, revenue, size, gender, and so forth are readily attainable without too much effort. So this approach yielded homogeneous groups who had similar observable characteristics. But of course, time marched on, and we rapidly discovered that simple demographic or firmographic segmentation did have severe limitations when it came to gaining a better understanding of decision-making processes. So most future-thinking researchers began adding questions to their surveys to pry apart this complex process. The simple demographic-based segmentation approaches gave way to psychographic segmentations, and these focus on lifestyle choices and attitudes. Still, though, there was something missing: customer needs and concerns. Needs are a bit tricky because they can vary by product category and by usage occasion. But at this point, companies had a better glimpse into the minds of their customers, and they were better able to tailor marketing messages. The concept of mass customization, which is to tailor products and services to particular customer needs, came into vogue, with effective marketing being conducted towards smaller and more unique segments of customers. At the same time, companies selling to other businesses, and we call this business to business or B2B, began to explore creating segments of their business customers. So now let's talk about different types of segmentations. Markets can be segmented in a number of ways. They can be segmented by product or service needs, by sensitivity to price, by geographic area, by demographics, firmographics, or by psychographics and lifestyles. For consumer segmentation, there are some basic types, and we don't presume to enumerate all the types of segmentation out there. We're just going to hit the highlights, if you will. The first one, of course, we've talked about demographic segmentation based on factors such as income, revenue, gender. We have characteristic segmentation. So this is based on a unidimensional aspect of a consumer. A good example of this is a disease state, such as patients who live with type 2 diabetes. Psychographic or attitudinal segmentation, again, we've talked about how this is based on attitudes, perhaps toward the product category, and lifestyle choices. Now, one that we haven't hit on yet is the price segmentation, and this one is very interesting. So the variation in household income creates an opportunity to segment some markets along a price dimension. So personal incomes range from low to high, so the reasoning goes a company should offer some inexpensive products, some medium-priced ones, and perhaps some more expensive luxury products. So this type of price segmentation is well illustrated by the range of automotive brands that have been marketed historically by General Motors. So, for example, we have Chevrolet, we had Pontiac and Oldsmobile, Buick and Cadillac. They all varied on price and status along a clearly defined spectrum to appeal to successively higher income groups. We also have some better methods, more robust methods, and we've talked a little bit about the needs-based segmentation for consumers. And this method is all about determining core problems that customers are trying to solve. The segmentation hinges on successfully identifying the overt or stated needs, concerns, preferences, values, as well as the hidden ones. One very important point about needs-based segmentation is that often these needs are independent of consumer characteristics. So, for example, a consumer who craves simplicity and convenience is not necessarily a working parent. Another type of segmentation is location-based. So this is based on the premise that people who live in the same neighborhood are more similar to one another than people who live in other neighborhoods. People who live one another usually have similar income levels, family backgrounds, family makeup, also have similar product and lifestyle preferences. Several companies across the world have developed location-based segmentations. For example, the Nielsen Company has assigned each household in the U.S. to a location-based segment called a prism cluster. Client companies can use these prism clusters to identify target segments and send direct mail specifically crafted to appeal to each target segment. And additionally, organizations can enhance targeting of their existing attitudinal behavioral segments more efficiently by appending these location-based segments. Another type of segmentation, transaction or usage-based. So this uses actual behavior from loyalty databases to inform the segment makeup. Most companies have multiple databases. They can have market research survey data, internal sources, and even third-party data. All of these contain information about customers' attitudes, preferences, buying behaviors, but rarely are these databases fully integrated and linked to capitalize on all of this information. The next type of segmentation is multidimensional. In traditional segmentation, there is a temptation, it's very strong, to cram too many variables into one analysis. It's sort of like trying to put everything in the kitchen sink in your analysis. In multidimensional segmentation, though, we step back and we take a look at the main ideas or dimensions and then create separate segmentations for each major idea or dimension. So an example is you might group together data related to retail shopping behavior, and you could segment along a retail shopping spectrum. You could also divide up the data set by media consumption patterns or lifestyle and attitudes. brand perceptions, and so on. As these different groups of variables are segmented, parallel and independent segmentations are created. Each respondent then falls into multiple segments. So as a respondent, I could fall into a pricing segment, a retail shopping segment, a lifestyle segment, or even a media segment. And these different solutions can be cross-tabulated to understand the big picture. This last technique is relatively new and extremely interesting, and several multinational companies are busy creating these type of segmentations. They're called demand segmentations, and we've heard some companies call them demand space segmentations. And these segmentations consider different types of needs within different types of usage occasions. And this segmentation acknowledges the fact that as humans, we are complex creatures. So the same person can have multiple needs at multiple times of the day and use multiple products and services to address those needs. So we know that several companies are currently using this type of segmentation. They have completely dropped their other types of segmentation, and now they are busy fitting their product portfolio and creating new products to fit into these different demand spaces. So it's only fair that we talk about business segmentation types. So some basic ones are descriptor segmentation, and you can imagine it's fairly easy for some of these descriptors to be obtained, but that's only if the businesses that you're looking at are public companies and that information is readily available. Another type of classification scheme is the industry code. So in the U.S., there is a North American industry classification system. Other countries have similar classification schemes, and this code actually puts industries into particular buckets depending on the kinds of products they produce. This can be complicated, though, when you have a huge multinational company that produces many products that go into many sectors of industry. Another segmentation for businesses is geography-based. So this uses business locations as a major grouping variable. So this approach can produce differentiated groups, but it does become unwieldy, again, when you have a business that has multiple locations, such as an insurance agency could have multiple branches. A bank can have multiple branches. Car dealers can have multiple locations. And the next and last business segmentation type is revenue-based. So this divides companies into size categories based on contribution to revenues or revenue share. And this approach recognizes that even though a business is small in comparison to others, it might also provide an organization with more substantial revenue. These basic business segmentation types are often used in combination, but they can lack the depth needed. For example, just because businesses are located in the same geography does not mean they have equal value or even the same need for your company's products and services. There are some better segmentation schemes for businesses. The first is need-based, and this is very similar to the consumer needs-based segmentation. So this is derived using primary research, usually, to uncover needs and concerns. And the questions that you seek to answer here are, what major problem is the business trying to solve? What must the business have in order to best meet or exceed their customers' expectations? And perhaps the most revealing question is, what keeps the CEO up at night? All of these can be used to construct a segmentation. Aspiration-driven segmentations. These offer a forward-looking picture of the market. These segmentations are also derived via primary research that taps into company management style, and their goals for the future. So this type of segmentation really asks the businesses to think about what they want to be. Typically it's in 5 or 10 years. These types of segmentations tend to have a longer shelf life. So now let's talk about different ways that segments can be modeled. So we're getting into somewhat of the nitty-gritty of how these segments are actually formed. So there are some less rigorous and more rigorous segmentation techniques. And when we talk about less rigorous, it's not intended to be pejorative. In fact, these less rigorous techniques can offer tremendous insight into a market. They just perhaps may not be as projectable as you would like. So the first one is qualitative. And as a quantitative person, some people may find it odd that I am such a fan of qualitative. I try to promote qualitative research before every segmentation study. It's important to craft the survey instrument using the language that your customers use. And businesses are not often in touch with that language. So qualitative actual interviews with customers really does help inform that survey. The next less rigorous segmentation technique is text analytics. And you may be thinking, well, I thought text analytics was fairly rigorous. As a technique, yeah, it is, and it's gaining a lot of traction in many areas in market research. The way that we've seen it applied to segmentation, though, is a little bit different. We know of companies who take text analytics and apply that to the blogs and pictures and what is being discussed about a particular product and service on social media. So this sounds very appealing. It seems to have a lot of face validity to marketers. Unfortunately, as we can imagine, that the users of your product or service, as they talk to one another on social media, they may not be representative of your actual customer base. They are only the folks who are actually talking, creating buzz about your product. We think yet, though, that this is a very intriguing method, and it could be a very good first step to a more rigorous segmentation. So there are many rigorous segmentation techniques. We do not have time to cover all of them. If I have missed your favorite or something that you're interested in, please feel free to email me after the presentation. So we'll just talk about a few of these. The first one is factor segmentation. This is something that we use here at Decision Analyst. And it begins with an analysis called factor analysis that really looks at grouping consumers according to just a few dimensions. So factor segmentation does yield coherent clusters of respondents. They have similar attitudes, and it can be an important way to segment the market. The next one is K-means cluster analysis. Now this is a tried and true standby, and it still enjoys quite a bit of popularity today. And it attempts to identify relatively similar groups of respondents based on selected characteristics. And the algorithm can handle a large number of respondents, which is always a plus. The next technique is somewhat new. It's called ensemble cluster analysis. And it uses several different clustering algorithms, such as K-means and hierarchical clustering. And it is also designed to handle very large data sets. And this analysis uses information from many different cluster analyses to arrive at a final solution. So this particular analysis can run 30, 50 different clustering analyses in one go and cull through all of these analyses to present the analyst with the best solution. So this method is gaining traction among analysts. The next one is latent class cluster analysis. This one has huge popularity in the market research community. And one of the major reasons for this is it is able to handle very different scaling of attributes. So you can put binary attributes. This is yes, no type of attributes. You can use 5-point scale attributes in the segmentation. You can use a whole host of things in this segmentation, and this algorithm handles each one of those appropriately. It's actually building a model that predicts patterns in multiple dependent variables such as attitudes, needs, behaviors as a function of segment membership. What's also attractive about this technique is you can include as a covariate or kind of a backseat driver a rating of a particular new product concept or a rating of a product that you have currently in the market. And this can help define the segments too. The last technique is latent class choice modeling. And this technique is an extension of the cluster analysis, but in the online survey, respondents are selecting their most preferred product benefits and rating the influence of these benefits on the purchase decision. So this modeling classifies customers into segments based on their preferred product benefits. This type of segmentation is ideal for customizing product offerings or bundles to match segment preferences. Well, so now we know how to derive our segments, and we have our segments. We now need to understand them. So we ask 4 major questions. The first one is we need to know who are they. Then we need to know what makes them tick, what is driving their behavior. And then we need to find out how should we talk with them. And perhaps the most important is, what is their value to your business? So to answer the who are they question, we find it's extraordinarily helpful to conduct a post-segmentation qualitative research. This research, it can be depth interviews, it could be focus groups, it could be online, anything that allows a particular person to fully give you what their needs are, what their problems might be, what are they trying to solve. And the output of this should be some very carefully and artfully constructed infographics, such as the ones that you see here. We find that when clients go this extra step after a segmentation study, they are never sorry they did it. These infographics often live on much longer than the original segmentation report. It really helps the business, then the business's ad agencies, understand who these people are. So the next big question to answer about your segment is, what is driving their purchase or usage behavior? So one of the ways that you can figure this out is with key driver analysis. This analysis identifies those attributes that are highly related to product purchase or product usage, and those that are less related. So in this example here, for a particular segment, they find that what's important is that the product takes up a little space and it's durable and easy to install. Then the marketing team can craft messages that address these issues for this particular segment. Another way to understand what drives purchase or usage behavior is using a max diff. These are extraordinarily popular, and we do recommend that every segmentation study has at least one max diff embedded. And for this particular analysis, respondents are shown smaller sets of product features or they could be attitudes. And the respondents select the one that most describes them or least, or the feature that they like the most or the least. This data is modeled and a true relative preference can be derived. What is really helpful about this analysis is that it forces consumers to make decisions about what's important and what's not. So in some of our surveys, when we have importance scales, we tend to get a lot of indications that everything is important. And everything could be important, but we need a better ranking and a better system. And this max-diff analysis really helps. It usually promotes a very good, clean segmentation as well. Another way that you can understand what drives purchase or usage behavior is quad mapping. These are nice visual displays. They plot derived importance and performance, dividing the space into 4 quadrants. So, for example, this could be a map for a particular segment, and we look and we find that there are 3 attributes that could really use some improvement for a particular product. A marketing team can take these, product development can also take these and address them in communications or to update the current product. The best ways to communicate with your customers. And this is a question that marketers try to really get a good handle on. The best way to find out, of course, is to ask your customers. Unfortunately, doing so creates a survey that is very long, and we all know that survey real estate is precious these days. So a better alternative is to append third-party media data to your segmentation data set. And this third-party media data can provide a vast array of geolocation-based variables. Some examples are household income, home ownership, value of investments, as well as affinity for hobbies such as gardening, wine appreciation, and golf. The third-party data can be valuable in understanding where to place your media buys for your target segments. So perhaps one of your key segments is heavily into Pinterest and Facebook. Another segment could really enjoy reading scuba diving magazines. And to understand your segments, what I believe is the most important key piece is to identify the value that each segment has to your business. And this is not necessarily the current value. So we can see in this chart, we have identified in these green bars how much is spent by this segment on your brands. Across all the segments, it's fairly large, and so this segment is probably a potential target for your business. However, we also see this particular segment over on the right. Now, it has the second highest total value in terms of the category, but in terms of your brands, it's less. Now, this could also be a target for you for growth. Perhaps you could develop a new product or products or a new way to talk about your current products that would appeal to this segment. So segmentation studies are very highly visible within corporations. They're highly strategic, and because of this, they can be subject to much political peril, as we like to say. So there are many pitfalls, but you can avoid them. The first major pitfall is segmenting a segment, and we all have temptations to do this. A marketing team could come to you and say, I want to understand the different types of 18 to 24-year-old females who live in Vermont and like to hike. The problem with that, of course, is that there probably aren't enough of those types of females to actually segment. What the marketing team has identified to you is in fact a target and not a market. We always recommend segment a larger pie. You will get more information that way. The next one is overlooking the universals. I think we all get so excited about the dazzle and the glitter of advanced analytics that we forget to look at the simple crosstabs, at the total responses for our segmentation surveys. And in those total responses, we could find some really key attitudes or behaviors that everyone in the product category is agreeing with or doing. And those are amazing finds, because what that means for your organization is that you do not have to craft individual communications. There is a unifying message that you can use for all segments. You can still talk to individual segments with special messages, but you will have a unifying theme. Another pitfall that we see all too often is creating too many segments. And there really isn't a magic number of segments. We'd like to think that there would be, but we've had clients come to us and really want many, many, many segments. Of course, although we're always happy to oblige, one of the main problems with this is that more segments mean more management time, more time that the marketing research team has to explain to internal stakeholders about the 15 or the 20 segments. So really think realistically before you go into a project. What's the maximum number of segments do you think your organization can actually work with? Another pitfall that we see quite a bit is the temptation to get all the segments. And this gets back to identifying the value of each segment. Not all segments are created equal, and not all segments have the same value to your organization. It may be appealing to target all segments, and if you are in an industry where you can actually have addresses, mailing addresses, zip codes, etc., and you can direct mail to everyone in your market, that's wonderful, and you probably can target all of your segments. But for other categories where the communication is more in the mass media, it is almost impossible to target all segments successfully without media spillover. The next pitfall is neglecting the basics. This gets back to understanding what your market is really all about. And don't be afraid to open up those cross tabulations or go online and look at your reporting system and review the data before you even get started with the segmentation. They're often hidden nuggets, and we try to draw those out for our clients. The next pitfall is targeting people or businesses instead of dollars. So it is tempting to go after a very large, in terms of size, segment, but looking toward the value of your segment, we believe, should be paramount. The last pitfall, non-mutually exclusive segments. So we know that humans are complex, businesses are complex. We assume in many of our segmentation schemes that once a customer has been assigned to a segment, that's their segment. They don't move to another segment. We recognize, though, that because of this complexity, a business owner could be using different products or services at different times of the year. So one business could be classified into one segment in the first quarter and be in another segment in the second quarter. We just want our client companies to be aware that this does exist and that segmentation can, on occasion, overlay a too simplistic structure to the market. So now some case stories, and we've pulled some interesting ones for you for segmentation, and several of these contain other elements of advanced analysis in addition to the segmentation. It is rare these days that we conduct segmentation research in of itself. It's usually overlayered with a volumetric forecast, or it could be a product feature optimization. So this first case study comes from the realm of consumer automotive. And for this particular client, it is a multinational automobile manufacturer. And this manufacturer was in search of the next new big product idea. And this was purposed to fill an unmet consumer need. They needed to relaunch a category that had not seen much innovation or growth in recent years in the U.S. and Western Europe. So specifically, our client needed to prioritize important product features, understand who the product would appeal to, and determine what they could expect in terms of sales volume. So during the survey, consumers evaluated a choice exercise to quantify the value of 20 different product features. In the analysis phase, the utilities from the choice model, along with psychographic statements and demographics, were used as the basis of the segmentation. So the decision simulator tool was developed by combining choice model utilities, the segmentation solution, and the volumetric forecast. And the research revealed 8 consumer segments per country that had varying preferences for features and likelihood to buy the product. 3 to 4 segments within each country were found to be optimal targets, and the optimal feature bundles that were derived were based on demand or on revenue maximization. These were found by simulating an overwhelming 1.5 million possibilities. So based on these results, an optimal product and price was determined for each target segment, and a product line of 3 automotive trim levels was recommended. This next case story comes from the realm of health behavior, and this is from a personal care product company. They wanted to understand how health attitudes were expressed in behaviors and product usage. So general population consumers were surveyed regarding health behaviors, such as health attitudes, personal hygiene, exercise, usage of nutritional supplements and medications, and chronic medical conditions. So personal hygiene behavior from a longitudinal diary study was combined with the health attitudes and behavior reported in an online survey. So we have 2 different robust data sources here. A robust segmentation analysis yielded distinct consumer groupings that reflected different health and health attitudes and habits. And so this company was able to apply the key findings to their marketing and product development initiatives, and then have recently introduced a product in the market to target a specific segment and their needs. So our final case story is a business-to-business case, and this was for an insurance carrier. And this is different from the other 2 cases in that we segmented insurance agencies, so not people but agencies. So traditionally this carrier had segmented their agencies based on characteristics that are observable, such as growth of policies, profit, policy count, and total written premium. So these operational variables are a useful means of grouping agencies. There's no doubt about that. But the insurance carrier came to us because they wanted a new way of grouping their agencies so that they could better engage with them on an individual basis to drive sales and thus increase the share of policies for the carriers. So over 8,000 insurance agencies were surveyed online. It was a very large effort. For each of the agencies, multiple respondents who worked in different roles, such as principals, owners, agents, producers, completed the online survey. The segmentation analysis aggregated and looked across all of these different respondents within an agency, rolled everything up into a final solution that had 8 distinct agency segments. A typing tool was developed, and this actually scores agencies into one of the segments. And this tool was linked to a database that's maintained by the insurance carrier. So the carrier took their segmentation into the field. They have territory sales managers that visit every agency several times throughout the year in person. And so over the course of 6 months, these managers use the typing tool to verify or to classify most of the agencies within the carrier's footprint. So across this time period, the carrier was able to classify almost 3/4 of their agencies. It was a tremendous effort. And while this effort was underway, the carrier worked with their innovation team to develop new marketing and agency sales tools tailored to each segment. And the ultimate outcome that's still ongoing is that there is greater satisfaction among the agencies with the carrier and with the carrier's support of their business. And of course that translates into increased revenue. So some final thoughts. Consider conducting a segmentation if your company wants to target your brand to a particular segment, if your company wants to develop guide rails for brand positioning, and if your company wants to develop new products for each segment. And of course, I must send you off with a hearty go forth and segment. Well, thank you for spending time with us today. In the little bit of time remaining, we'll try to answer some of your questions that you have sent in. And let's see, we will start with, here's a question. My company is using a segmentation that is 5 years old. Okay, when should we do another segmentation? That is a great question. I do get this a lot. It really depends on the industry. There are some industries that do not change a whole lot from year to year. Durable good type industries, they're a little bit slower moving than consumer packaged goods. So those segmentations can last longer or have a longer shelf life. We do typically advise our clients that if you have a segmentation that is over 5 years old, regardless of your industry, it is time to update it. And for our clients who are in, say, high technology areas, we recommend updating that segmentation every 2.5, 3 years. Okay, so let's see. We have another question. Oh, this is a good one. Our most recent segmentation initiative failed. How can we prevent this from happening again? Oh, wow, that's a loaded one. Segmentations can fail in numerous ways and in numerous stages. What I see most often really is in the beginning or before the segmentation effort is really fully underway, the internal stakeholders have not been fully briefed, have not been fully, they have not fully bought in to the segmentation or allowed to contribute. I think if the internal team fails to do that, the segmentation effort is likely not to go very well. Another place where I see a segmentation initiative failing is on the back end. So we've been recommending and have participated in something called a working pod. So that's pod, P-O-D. Now this working pod is a gathering of many different people from the client organization, such as the innovation team, the pricing team, competitive intelligence, it could be market research or marketing, and also your vendor, your supplier, whoever did your segmentation. All of these folks meet face-to-face. It could take 1 day or 2 days, and they bring all the data, all the multiple rich sources of information, including the segmentation, and they talk about how to internalize it within the organization, what to really do with the results. This is why personas are very important. That persona look can also be brought to these working pods. We've seen these pods be highly successful. They generate a lot of internal energy. They allow for multiple stakeholders to buy into the segmentation and to, frankly, get excited about and to apply the results. Okay, and that is all the time we have now. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you for attending today's Insider Series webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to email Beth. Our next Insider Series webinar will be Wednesday, October 12th. Decision Analyst Jerry W. Thomas will be presenting on advertising pre-testing. We hope you enjoyed today's session and are looking forward to seeing you for next month's webinar. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you very much.